Well, I'm Kenny Sprague. This is my best friend Ranger. Well, I better take that back. My wife's my best friend. But I'm a hometown guy, native of Grand Lake, and I've always loved Grand Lake, and I always will. So it's a beautiful little town. It's a great place to visit. People are friendly. Well, most people. And we're sitting here on Middlewalk in Grand Lake Stream, what they call Middlewalk. And the origin of this right here is when they, umpteen years ago, when they had the tannery. They put this in here, and somehow or other that water went down and supplied the tannery. And this was built by hand. In fact, right behind us, you can see where they've been digging. And this is Middlewalk, and most people that come to Grand Lake favor coming to Middlewalk.
You can share that story too of the time when with the dredging and you know how the folks kind of came together and helped with that, or?
Well, what happened? We wanted to dredge this, and when the state of Maine put the 2 new pipes in the lake to get better water, one pipe is a little shorter than the other, and I believe the shortest one is in shallow water, and the longest one's in deep water, so they can change the temperature of the water in the canal, in the hatchery. So I got the bright idea, while you're putting those pipes in the lake, why not dredge that canal? I don't know how many millions of dollars was being spent to put these pipes in, which was a good thing. And this pipe here, we were all hoping they would have to replace it, but they took pictures of it, the inside, and it was in perfect condition, so they wouldn't move it. So I went to the fish hatchery and the contractors and different people, and a couple of people from the inland fisheries and wild game, and they said no, they couldn't afford it. And I said, say what? Why can't you clean that mess up? You guys made it. But anyway, we lost that battle. So in the meantime, there was always a beautiful American flag on the hatchery. So when you come in town and you look ahead, you'd see this beautiful flag waving. It was always there from day one when I grew up. So I said to the guy, I said, well, why don't you put the flag back up down to the hatchery? And one fellow said, he wants a flag. And I said, yeah, I'd like to have a flag there. There was always one there. Why isn't there one now? And one individual from Inland Fisheries and Wildlife said, well, we don't have a flag at all of our state entities. Well, I said, you always had one here, and I think you ought to put it back. And I'm asking you. And it didn't go over very big. There's 3 men standing there, and I said to him, I said, well, I can see that there are no veterans here, like me. So I said, not such good things. That was the end of that. So growing up in Grand Lake, you want to get back to that. When I was a kid, growing up in Grand Lake, there was a lot of us. There are very few now. Grand Lake's an old town now. We're all getting older and they're passing away. But there was kids everywhere, and everybody had bicycles. And all we did was play basketball and baseball and swam. We spend all the time in the summer up at the dam. We always swam. And of course now there isn't that many kids, but Grand Lake was quite a nice little town. We had our own school, 2 years of high school, and we were pretty well educated, I guess. And then I always had my heart set on going to high school in Princeton, because I played basketball and I wanted to play for Princeton. And I'll be darned, that was the first year they sent us to Woodland. And that was awesome. And I haven't liked Woodland since. So anyway, Grand Lake's a nice town. The people are friendly, and there's a lot of changes. And us natives, we don't like those changes. I started working in the woods. It was just a thing. If you could help your parents, and it was expected out of us kids to get out and do what you can to help. And I went working in the woods when my dad had teams, bus teams. Then he got a little bulldozer. But I was real young, and I hated horses. I still do. But anyway, the horse would take the logs out to the yard while they got everything ready to load on the trucks. And I would follow the horse out through. But I started what they call swamping trails. Like my dad cut pine. And back then, I mean, there was pine. I mean, they weren't little things. And I remember that the lumber company would inspect his cuttings, and if the top of the tree where he cut it off wasn't 6 or 8 inches, he was in trouble. Now, if you can find one 6 or 8 inches on the trunk, you do well. You cut that one. So anyway, I would swamp, had a double bitter axe, and I'd swamp all the jack firs down to this big pine tree or the next pine tree, so the team could get in there and get the tree after it was cut. And they could only take like if it was a real big pine tree, they could only pull out an 8-foot log. That's how big the logs were. And some were 14 feet and 16 feet. And I did that for a long time. Then my father put a chainsaw in my hand. Well, little did I know how to cut a pine tree down and do it right. And I had my father's brother-in-law worked for him in the woods, and he kind of kept an eye on me. So I'd saddle up to one of them big old pine trees with that chainsaw that I could hardly lift. You could hardly pull the cord to get it started. This is right out here in Fourth Lake. And I'd saddle up to one of them big old pine trees, and I'd start buzzing away. And I really didn't know where I was going to go, but I always managed to get it cut. And I cut it, measure it, and cut it up. And one time I cut my leg real bad. Built real bad. Actually, I still got a scar. Well, you can't really see it right there. And I cut it real bad with a saw. And I just kept on going. The blood running down my boot, because you didn't let on that you got hurt, because if you did, you were stupid. so we just kept working, and then I cut for quite a while. And then I started getting a little age on me. My father set me in the seat of his truck and showed me how to shift and steer and drive the truck. And one time he was working out to Monroe Lake, up that way, and he had a brand new red truck, my favorite color, big truck, and we loaded it. And my father always called me Samson, because I was only this big around. And it was all loaded. He says, "Go ahead, Samson, take her." I was like 13, 14 years old. I jumped in that baby, and wasn't I tickled? And I got her all the way to Passamaquoddy Lumber Company in Princeton, all in one piece and back. So I've been running heavy equipment ever since. But I grew up in the woods, and like with Grand Lake, the history of Grand Lake began on lumbering. It was all logging to feed the mill in town, because they used hemlock bark to tan the hides in the tannery. And all the men that started in Grand Lake worked in the woods, and it continued. Well, there's some going on around here still. And in my opinion, Grand Lake started in the woods logging business. And you hear an awful lot about the guides this and the guides that. And I don't take anything away from the guides, but logging's what started Grand Lake, and it kept it going for many years. And then fishing took over, and between the two, we have a nice little town here. So that's my story on that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah. No, that's really...
Well, I have another thing too, if you're interested in. It's the tower, the wooden tower up here. Well, one time there was a widow lady lived up that road, and she come to me. She'd lost her husband, and she come to me. She said, "Kenny," I won't mention any names. She said, "Kenny, can you do me a favor?" And I said, "Yes, I can do you a favor. I'd be happy to." She says, "There's no street sign up the Tower Road." And she says, the people in the mail don't know where to go, the UPS and all those people. She said, "Would you build me a sign?" I said, "Yes." So I made a sign identical to the one street signs around town. And it said, Tower Road. It was a canoe with a motor on it. And I did a pretty good job on it, all treated lumber. And I was putting it up on the corner. going up the Tower Road. And this fella come along, said to me, "Kenny, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm putting up a sign." You know, well, he said, "You can't put that up there, a PFA." Well, that right there hit the wrong nerve with me. I said, "Who says?" Well, he says, "That's not the Tower Road." Here we go again. I says, "Of course it's a Tower Road. It's always been the Tower Road. It's probably supposed to be Church Street up to my house, but we always called it the Tower Road because then it was gravel all the way to that tower." Well, he says, "You can't put that up." Well, I said, "You're talking to the wrong guy. This is going up, period." And that was probably 20 years ago, and it's still there, and it says Tower Road. But I was told it was called the Tower Lane. We don't live in New Jersey. This is Grand Lake Stream. It's a damn road. What is now called the Farm Cove Road, not the Farm Cove Dam Road, but the Farm Cove Road. And they were going out there, and he kept bulldozing and bulldozing, and he kept going all the way up alongside of West Grand Lake. Well, the guides took notice to that. Like, whoa, what's going on here? So that was the beginning of the land trust. They formed this trust to protect the land, and by God, they've done it. And the land trust is very touchy about who does what. And of course, the Grand Lake's right in there with them, supporting them. And the land trust has become a great success. And 9 out of 10 of us love the land trust. And the town went to bat to support them, and it's been a great thing. So that's another change that didn't take place, like the windmills and cutting this road down here and developing it. So we kind of try to shoot things down and keep this little town a little town, you know. So that's the way we want it. Speaking for myself, but most people will agree. And we've had some people come into town that's really good at helping because they supported that land trust. And I think financially, the land trust may not have survived without the people that come to Grand Lake and help keep it going. So it's another thing we don't want to change. Because if I had my way, the road would still be gravel. Heck with the pavement. But anyway, most of it's for the good. It's good. So, yeah.
Thank you, Receptacle.
Well, I did mention how I love Grand Lake Stream growing up in Grand Lake. But like most of us youngsters back then, very few could afford to continue their education, so they moved away to work or joined the military. And I joined the military right out of school. And I went to heavy equipment school because I was basically an operator that young. And I stayed away for a long time. And I did my turn in Vietnam and a few other places over there. And I always wanted to come back. I wanted to come back to Maine. And when I come back from overseas, when you come out of a place like Vietnam, you usually got your choice of bases that you wanted. Well, I didn't. They sent me to Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. So when I got out of California, nobody liked Vietnam veterans. You know, we were nothing. So I couldn't get a job anywhere, and I come home and I couldn't find work. So I went back to Massachusetts, where I was stationed in the Air Force, and I got a civil service job. I had a good job, a lot of friends there, but the state of Maine was pulling me. And I wanted to come back home. I don't know how many years I was away, a long time, 30 years maybe. And when I come back home, I got a job right off working for Georgia Pacific as a heavy equipment operator, building logging roads and different things. But I lived in Princeton. And that wasn't good enough. My dad and my grandmother still lived in Grand Lake. And I couldn't stand it. I said to my wife, we're moving home. She said, "You are home." I said, "No, I'm not home. Home's up the road another 13 miles. And we moved back to Grand Lake and built that log cabin up there and managed to survive, and I'm still here and happy as hell." So that's the end of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Also back to my youth in town, this beautiful little town. We had a lot of good times. You know, we didn't have snowmobiles or things like that. I was the last kid in town to get a bicycle, and the town was a happy little town. And like I said before, we were poor, but we didn't know it because we were all the same. Everybody was poor, but we helped each other. We did what we could, and like most of the men worked half a day on Saturday, and that's when the party started. in Grand Lake, I don't know if you've heard about Grand Lake and its vanilla. The men drank vanilla. The Pine Tree store up here was owned by Paul Hoare, Laura Barber's father. The girl I mentioned that asked me I could get Middlewalk rebuilt, and we did. Laura Barber was one of them. And he sold vanilla. And it came in little bottles, little flat bottles, and the men drank that. I guess it was vanilla extract, and they couldn't get out of town to get beer, so they'd buy that vanilla. This guy made a fortune selling vanilla. So anyway, it's Saturday afternoon. The party started in Grand Lake. Everybody in Grand Lake drank, even my father. And they partied hard. They worked hard, and they would fight. They would fight with each other, fist fights and everything else. Saturday night, and they would be hung over Monday morning. They'd go to work. They worked hard in the woods all week, and then come Saturday afternoon, they started all over again, and that was their fun. And we all us kids got a kick out of that. And the men, they had a set of lockers up here over there. The guides had lockers, and that was a favorite hangout on Saturday morning. Everybody was sitting, hanging over, and us kids would go up there and just sit beside them and listen to them and laugh at the things they'd say or what was going on. But it was party hardy in Grand Lake back then, and it was fun. And you know, we had bicycles, rode the bicycles all the time. And speaking of drinking, I finally got a bicycle. I always chased my friends running behind them. I was always running anyway. And I had this nice, I remember that bike, it was a J.C. Higgins from Sears Roebuck. It was gray and red. I was so proud of that bike. And where I lived, I'd go in the driveway with my bike, pull right up to the steps, and when I got off my bike, it would lean against the steps, and I'd walk in the house. Kept my bike there. Well, one day, my father's cousin come out, and he had maybe too many vanillas, I'm not sure. Crash. He run right into the bike and hit the damn house. House is up on posts, almost knocked the house off the post, and wrecked my bike. And that was the only bike I ever had, never got another one. And as I grew up, I'd say to him, you owe me a bicycle, but I never got it. But you know, we ice skated. You know, we'd shovel the lake off of the cove up here, and now they don't do that. Somebody's got to do it for them. And we snowshoed everywhere. We had trails through the woods. We had ski trails. Now they call it cross-country skiing. But we had trails everywhere, and we always hunted. You know, us kids were hunters and trappers. And I used to set snares for rabbits, and I had a little dog. It was kind of a beagle dog. And my father and one of his friends, they had a bootlegger out to Peter Dana Point, more fun. And Dad went out there one night to get a jug, him and his friend. And what they come home with, they come home with a jug and this dog, Mickey. His name was Mickey. And that dog and I grew up together. Anyway, I set some snares, rabbit snares. And I was going on my snowshoes and I heard my dog howl. Well, I caught my dog in a snare. Well, that was the end of my trapping business. I took all my snares up. But things like that we did, we had a great time with it. So we were always out. We never stayed in the house. It was fun. Grand Lake was a fun place. It still is, but not like it used to be. You know, kids have a good time. Trouble is, there aren't very many of them. I love to see the kids out around. So it's dying out.